Hello, hi, what's up everyone? It's me, Karen, your favorite booktuber, and today I'm here to do a video that I am really excited about. I've been sitting on this video for probably like 2 months, but things happen, so whatever. Better late than never. Essentially, as we know, have been getting into a little bit of a perfume journey, and I got a discovery set in March, and I thought it would be a really great, fun little experiment for all of us to kind of do a books and perfume pairing. I got a set from Regime de Fleur. This is 14 of their sets. Pardon. These are 14 of their scents, and I believe they've actually put out a new discovery set, which includes 16 scents. I have 15 of their scents before me, and I was able to find books for 14 of them. So we're going to talk about that, and also at the same time, I do want to mention that there are 2 resources that I'm going to include in the show notes. By resources, I just mean different people's interpretations of the same 14 scents. One is a Reddit thread and the other is a TikTok. And I think it just goes to show one of the fascinating things about perfume is that we all pick up on different things. It is so individualistic. We all have different reference points. Our noses are picking up on different things, whatever it may be. Sometimes a scent reminds us of a certain time and place in our life, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. So keeping all of that in mind, if you're interested, check those out. And I would have to say that from what I've encountered through Regime de Fleur's fragrance line, they're all very beautiful. This is a niche fragrance house created by Alia Raza, and there's a lot of wonderful storytelling and copy, and it seems very thoughtful, and I do think that there is something here for pretty much everyone. Some of us in Plaque, when I said I'm taking everyone on a perfume journey with me, I was not kidding. It has trickled out to a few other people trying perfume, and in particular some from Regime de Fleur, and I feel as if each person can find something unique to them within this product line. And I will also tell you which one I bought, which one I bought a full bottle of. Anyways, let's start off. The first scent that we're going to talk about is Tears. And Tears is described by them as romance. So each perfume has like a tagline, and the tagline for Tears is romance, heartbreak, lilac, both fresh and forgotten. Naturally, this is a very lilac heavy scent. Upon first spritz, it is a little powdery to me. And I'm gonna also say something a little controversial. I was seeing people talk about this brand quite a bit on TikTok, in particular this scent, describing how it is the embodiment of melancholy, how it is so just evocative, sadness, like perfect sad girl perfume. I was coming at this scent with those expectations and I didn't necessarily experience that. I think it's a very lovely scent, but it is not melancholy. If you were gonna cry, this would be possibly happy tears, like someone who's crying at their graduation because they're sad they're not gonna be with their friends anymore. That wasn't really my experience when I graduated. But that's kind of what this reminds me of. And I think there's something, when I was reading some of the reviews on Fragrantica, a few people were kind of mentioning there's something comforting and it reminds them of their grandmother in a nice way and this sort of nostalgia. And I do sort of pick up on that. I do think that is the case. There's strong lilac, a little bit of pink peppercorn, and a musk. Those are what stand out to me. And the book that correlates the most with me is Great Granny Webster by Caroline Blackwood. Now this was her debut, I believe, and I'm pretty sure. And this tells the story of this young girl. She's probably 14 years old, and she is forced to live with Great Granny Webster because her parents are no more, and she's in this isolated house. It's cold and dreary, and she's stuck just living the life of an old woman. She has to abide by the rules of Great Granny Webster. But at the same time, we're also introduced to her aunt, and her aunt presents this different idea of womanhood. She's it's 1920s flapper vibes, and she's a free woman, and she's out and about on the streets, and she's a little manic. And then there's a third female figure in this novel, which is the narrator's mother, and she's trying to learn more about her and piece out these pictures. And there's something about this where there's this sort of young girl, so you have that lilac, but also because of her spending time with her great grandmother and kind of trying to uncover stories from her past and tried to find out the truth, there is this sort of like darkness, the cobwebs kind of vibe that I think does remind me of Tears. The creator, the founder on the website. Hi, sorry, I got an alarm because I need to put eye drops in for my eye, like an antibiotic, whatever, and I had to run up and do that. So I don't exactly remember where I left off, but I think what I was trying to say was that the perfume founder on the website has this sort of copy correlating with this about how when one receives lilacs, they're so fresh, they're so beautiful, but this perfume is inspired by lilacs a few days afterwards. And yeah, that's Tears and Great Granny Webster. After that, we're going to talk about Rock River Melody, which is described as a hypnotic horseback ride through a sparkling green forest. Apparently, Rock River Melody is Alexa Chung's favorite perfume, her signature scent, and this is like very green, mossy, a little wet. Just connected to the earth. There's green sap, patchouli. I do think the patchouli is quite strong in this. And then ivy as well. And the book for me that I think about is a book that is very much so connected to the earth and considering the land. The land is very much so a character in this book, and that would be The Bog Wife. Now this tells a story of four or five siblings. There's 3 girls, 2 boys, so we have 5 siblings. And the patriarch has died. Their father has recently passed, and this is like a weird family. They have an intense lore that they must abide by. They have strict rituals, and they're kind of very isolated. I don't think any of them have gone to school. They only know like this really obscure, only 2 of the boys know this really obscure like medieval French, and the rest of the girls, like the rest of the kids, they just know how to take care of the land. One of the daughters has left, she escaped, and now she's returned because the father died and they have to complete the ritual. And they are involved in a covenant with the land that they do something when a patriarch has died, and they renew the cycle and the land prospers. The problem is that something is up. The covenant is broken and the land appears to be dying ever so slightly. This book is kind of magical and very like eerie. I thought this was really gripping. The end didn't entirely hit for me, but I do think that there's something about Rock River Melody and this idea of a wilderness and being out in the natural environment and just being really connected to the earth that reminds me of this. Okay, next up we have Falling Trees. The line of copy that correlates for this is the quiet strength and fascinating drama of the woods. And this is like also very woody, but in a very different way from that one. Like this is very green, I guess you could say. And this reminds me of like the sap of a tree. It is just like what I imagine it would be like to actually be like in wilderness. Whereas like this was the bog life. This next scent is like you are in nature. I've never gone camping, but this is what I imagine camping would smell like. You have juniper, some black pepper, myrrh, oak moss. It's really pleasant. And the book that this correlates the most with me is Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, which is a book about men in nature doing shit. And there's like beautiful descriptions of the natural environment. They have, our narrator is this kid who's dropped out of Harvard. He's gone out west because he wants to experience life and see the world. And he gets himself involved in this little, what do you call it? Like a mission or a job. He sets off on this job with this crazy guy to basically kill buffalo, and they slaughter these buffalo, and it is just an obscene level of violence. And you see the ways in which this destruction wreaks havoc on their identities of who they are. And I do think that there's something about Falling Trees and this that like very elemental, connected to nature, really strong sense of the life of a tree. And we're also kind of just seeing the life of man and the life of nature here. After that, we have Oud Dukhan, which is, oh, they're also pretty. This is smoldering oud on a slab of cool white marble. And this is, to me, like, I guess this is my idea of like what a clean scent is, but this isn't like the clean girl kind of aesthetic. This to me is like a really luxurious hotel in the Middle East. That's what this smells like to me. There's some cardamom, black pepper, oud, and like white musk. It just smells, yeah, it smells like a really nice hotel where you have like beautiful leather seating and dim lighting. Ever since like the Edition in Miami, like those are the comps for me, like beautiful hotels. And I love a beautiful hotel, but I think when I wore this, my sister was like, why would you want to smell like a hotel? And I was like, why wouldn't you? But the books that this remind me of, I picked two because for me, like this author's, she only has 2 books out right now. I think a third one is coming out later in the year, maybe in November. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that this author to me writes books that are very atmospheric, that remind me of this scent. Like this to me is a very sophisticated scent, sophisticated in the sense that like luxe hotels, yeah? Anyways, the author that I'm thinking of is Anne Yu, and I pulled out both Braised Pork, which is her debut, and then Ghost Music, which was her sophomore novel. And both of these are considering a woman in a certain time and space. Either she's in an unhappy marriage or her husband has passed, like something has happened like that. Like she is alone and isolated, and she is in the city trying to sort of like piece together what she's going to do with her life and the secrets of her relationship almost. They're just both books that are very atmospheric. I believe in Braised Pork, the narrator spends a lot of time in a bar across the street from her high-rise apartment building, and she gets to know a barman, and they're drinking whiskey and they're listening to jazz, and there's something like kind of sexy about this book that I think this book is the one that's most closely associated with the scent. This one is a little less so because I guess the mushrooms in this would make it a little bit more earthy, but I do think there's something about how both of these books have a very similar, like super atmospheric vibe. So that's that book. Okay, that's that book and that perfume. Wow, what a switch up to say different language in a video. Anyways, the next scent that I want to talk about is Cacti. And the line of copy for this is the crisp, refreshing inner vitality of desert succulents. This is very fresh. There is a middle note of cucumber, and that to me is the most prominent. Sorry, not even just cucumber, it's cucumber water. And that is the most prevalent in this for me. And then I guess I would say like the bergamot. It has also, oh, we have a package, how exciting. Yeah, there's like other stuff in this, but to me, I just think this is very, it's like fresh and bright and very cucumber. And the book that this reminds me of, like even before I thought of the idea for this video, like I knew like, oh, this reminds me of All Fours by Miranda July, which is a story of a woman who is going through her midlife crisis. She's told her husband that she's going to drive across the country to go to New York for some work stuff. Instead, she drives to the next town, an imaginary town that doesn't actually exist, and she just holes up in a hotel and rethinks her life and gets obsessed with this young man. And there's something about like the succulents and this idea of like being in a desert, and also like the LA landscape, and the sun is shining, and you just see all this beautiful, like, not foliage, because you see all these beautiful, not like succulents and the weird trees that are natural to California, which we don't have in the Northeast. Therefore, I don't have the correct verbiage to describe it, but there's something about like California that reminds me of cacti. It is just so strongly correlated in my brain that there's something just very like being by the beach about it. That's like cacti, Miranda July, fresh, sun, a little bit of like sunscreen. Those are the vibes there. After that, we have Nitesurf Neroli. I might be saying that first word wrong, I don't know. But the description of this is a glowing marine floral on a hot summer night. And this I'm looking over at lots of spots because I have different resources available to me, but this is the journal that I wrote about some of my perfume first thoughts, and the only thing I wrote for this smelled like Egypt to me. This reminds me of Egypt. This has neroli water, neon petals, I don't even know what that means, smoked seashells, and a few other stuff. I'm not mentioning every single one of the notes in here. I'll like try to remember to put up a photo, but this is just what Egypt smelled like. And so the book that I thought about for this, it was kind of a no-brainer for me, was the fiction book that I read about Egypt, which was Akhenaten, Dweller in Truth, which was an interesting book that is historical fiction, where this author has constructed the time of Akhenaten and the king who decided to forsake the old gods and worship the sun, kind of like altered society for a little bit. Like things were out of whack, and he has died, and this young narrator wants to know more about history. He wants to dwell in truth. He wants to uncover stuff, and so he decides to interview the people who were closely associated with the pharaoh. So he interviews his advisor, his tutor, the sister-in-law, and then finally the wife, Nefertiti. Yeah, this is a story within a story kind of thing. You're trying to get to the bottom of the truth. With each telling of the story, you find out more details, and then by the end you have to ask yourself, like, well, what really is truth? And yeah, I just think because this scent just reminds me of Egypt. It reminds me of like walking along those streets and the just mixing of the ancient and modern. Yeah, okay, that's that scent. Next we have Glass Blooms. Glass Blooms is described as gleaming petals and the scent of your own skin. There is something like tiny bit powdery almost, but not quite. This is very strong on the peony floral, and there's also just a tiny bit of incense. There is something about this that reminds me of like a really, in particular reminds me of like my mother's deodorant that she gets from England. That's what this reminds me of. There's like this clean kind of quality to it, or like a freshness, but also floral. And then the book that this reminded me of is The Girls by John Bowen, which tells, and I think it's like, because for me this scent evokes like something that I know comes from England. I kind of thought of this book in which we had these two women who live in this like tiny little village in a very like idyllic area of England, where they are upper class, surrounded in a village that's primarily like working class people, but they manage to get by having this shop that sells these like fancy cheeses and what do you call it, jam and stuff like that, and they like make handicrafts, like that kind of stuff. And they are two women who are in a relationship together, and at the beginning we find out that like there was like one of the women was kind of feeling a little, you know, constrained by this relationship. She goes off on her own little adventure, and somehow they end up with a baby, okay? Like, I'm not going to tell you how exactly because it's quite a funny scene, but there is a baby, and then also there is a murder. And yeah, I don't want you to think though that this is like a murder mystery, that it's like very thrilling, but it is like a fun book, and it's just interesting to see how these women are like grappling with this situation that becomes very comical. And the scent of Glass Blooms, which is like sort of fresh, but also a little like skin-like, is correlates quite strongly with the things that are happening here. Okay, after that we have Little Flower. Little Flower is really interesting because it is a scent that I guess Chloe Sevigny, Chloe, my friend Chloe, that Chloe worked on the scent with the founder, and this is kind of like her dream rose scent, and this really is rose. Like, it is kind of a perfect rose. It's not like overly rose where you just feel like it's sickly sweet. There's like a freshness to this, and I think the freshness comes because there's pomelo in it, so there's like this slight like almost like citrusy quality to it. There's also peony, and Palo Santo and another wood. Like, it's very like nuanced and multi-layered. I think that this is a perfect rose scent. It is really nice. This was the scent that I was kind of considering buying because, well, I kind of considered buying a lot of them because I did like a lot of them, but it's just really pretty. I think it's something that would also be great. It's great on its own, but also if you wanted to use it to layer it with something else, it would be good to kind of like contrast the roses. Like if you had another perfume that also had like a smaller note of rose, it would be interesting to put them together. The rose that this is an ottoman rose, and it's just like so pretty. Anyways, so the book I decided that correlated the best with Little Flower was The Mystery Guest, which is a true story, but it's sort of like, it's a literary memoir, if you would, quite slim, which tells a story of a narrator trying to pull his life back together after a breakup that's ruined his life for the last like 2 years, and he thinks about it all the time. Anyways, his ex calls him up and invites him to a party where some famous artist is throwing a party, and every single year the only demand she really makes is that there's a mystery guest she doesn't know. The narrator becomes the mystery guest, and he goes to this house, and there is, this is quite a posh party, right? This is full of like the highest members of society from a creative lens, like lots of artists and creatives and men in suits. And the author is there, the narrator is there in the house of his former lover, and when he walks into the foyer of this house, he is greeted by this like vase that is filled with roses. And this then becomes like a focal point for the story, as the only interaction that he kind of has with his former love is before the roses, and they're having this conversation, and it's very literary, and it makes him reread a Virginia Woolf novel. Like, I don't want to give away so much because it's so slim, but because of the prominence of the flowers in this book, I think it just like matches up with Little Flowers so well, because there is roses is quite like common, like roses becomes a big symbol in this book, but there's also, because they're in this like really luxe space, there's something about how like that pomelo note of the perfume just like gives it this freshness that makes me think that this is connected. I hope that what I'm saying makes sense, because I feel like in a way it's talking about scents can be so abstract, and I've never done a video like this, so it is a bit tough for me to marry my impressions with this is an exercise that I'm trying, and hopefully this is coming across and makes sense for you guys. Okay, the next perfume that I want to talk about is actually a perfume that this is the only perfume that I did not like in this scent, that when I tried it on my skin, I immediately washed it off. And that scent is Jade Vines. And I think the thing is, I don't think I really love tuberose. And this and another one of the perfumes are quite reliant on tuberose. This is green, floral, and it's just straight like tuberose for me. Like, that's kind of the strongest thing that I smell. The founder of the brand describes it as like the jade vine. So it is a plant that is like, climbing up. There's something like very overpowering about this scent, and a little bit of like darkness and decadence in it. And therefore I thought of My Death by Lisa Tuttle, which is the story of a woman who is suffering with writer's block, and then all of a sudden she gets the idea. She knows what she's going to write her next book about. She's going to write about an artist, a former muse who is now in isolation, living her life, devoid of paparazzi and public acclaim. I paused because while I was thinking about this book, it reminded me that I think there's a correlation we can make between this book and Vivian by Emily Russo, considering the older female artist who was once a muse and has now become a recluse. So anyways, Jade Vines reminds me of this, because also at the end we have the scene where an island is like super important here. There's something like lush and decadent and a little bit like, this book becomes very meta, and there is a way in which the environment of the second half of the book reminds me of this perfume, where the narrator starts to like, she's not sure what's happening. She's not sure what's real, what's not, what's real and what isn't. And there's a way in which I kind of envision like Jade Vines like taking over her, and that doesn't happen in the book. Okay, I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen in the book. That's just me imagining the narrator in a different space, or how the psychological tension of what's happening is probably impacting her, and then creating my own vision. But anyways, Jade Vines, My Death. After that, we have Labas, which is Lust for a Bygone World of Velvet, Silks, and Leather. This is another one of those scents that is also kind of like an Oud Dukhan, which is, they both seem very luxe to me. I like this one a lot. I kind of want to, I think I'm going to wear this on my skin later today. This is leather. I really like leather scents. I just find it to be so exciting to smell like leather for some reason. But there is something else here, which would be that there's like a little bit of rose, and I just love this idea that it's a bygone world, velvet, silks, and leather. And the world that I like think this correlates with is Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller, which is his book describing his experiences being an expat in Paris and like writer life, writing his novel, drinking a lot and having lots of sex. And I just like imagine there's something like luxe fabrics, silk, these women are like really well dressed, or like not always, because sometimes he is interacting with people of a lower socioeconomic class. But there is something just like, this makes me think of like a club in the 1920s, and there's like a little bit of wood in this as well. Yeah, it's nice. I like this one quite a bit. But do I need to talk more about what Tropic of Cancer is? Anyways, Henry Miller, expat in Paris, writing his novel and talking about sex. I made a specific video about this if you want to learn more, but in this he's like, there's not really much of a plot. He's just kind of recounting a few of his experiences and introducing us to other characters within his world. And he's considering the nature of literature and history, and how like progress is over, it's done, we have no more. And there's a way in which there's this sex scene he describes where he's watching his friend fuck this girl, and he's just like, there's something so mechanical about their actions. They are machines. Yeah, that's what the perfume reminds me of, Tropic of Cancer. And after that, the next perfume that we have is Himitsu Violets. Himitsu in Japanese means secret, so secret violets, and the descriptor for this is a mauve tinted secret tucked behind teeth. This has like suede, violet, and there's something like a sort of, I don't know, like not medicinal, that's not the right word, but like, you know, when doctors and stuff, they put like those white gloves on, there's something like a artificial clean that honestly, like, this sort of reminded me of like being in a dentist office. And I think for that reason, the book that I chose, I don't have the physical copy. I gave it away to a charity shop in London, but it reminds me of Solenoid, because Solenoid just centers a lot on the hospital and going to the doctor's office. And I think it opens up with a scene, I don't remember, but like, I mean, there's a weird belly button scene, but that's how it opens up with, I think. But he's like sitting in the dentist chair, he gets his teeth pulled at one point. There's this reoccurring motif of the hospitals in the book, alongside his many dreams and him being in a solenoid house situation. But there's something about the like suede, I think maybe it's a suede that gives me that sense of the doctor's office almost, though I don't know what doctor's office has like so much suede in it. But yeah, there's something like there. And yeah, they're just this is Himitsu Violets is Solenoid. Solenoid is also a secret, because we're trying to figure out what's going on in that book. The next scent that we're going to talk about is Fleur Eclair. Fleur Eclair is really interesting in the sense that it is a gourmand, and I guess that has been a trend that's been really popular in the perfume world, but Regime de Fleur's take on it is a floral gourmand. It's not overly sweet. It doesn't use vanilla at all. It is a white floral, so you have jasmine and you also have orange blossom in it. So it has like a little bit of freshness, but then it also has this like layers of interest, because there's cardamom, there's cocoa butter and cocoa powder or something like that, rose water, and cardamom sugar. And every time like I smell this like throughout the day, like I pick up on something different. I really go through a real journey with this scent. On the dry down, it has like the amber and patchouli sort of like just like undercurrent, which is quite nice. This is to me like super ethereal and airy, and I don't know if this helps, but it doesn't. But like when I first smelled this and was kind of thinking about it, it reminded me of like an empty can of whipped cream, and I don't know why, but it's in a positive way. And so I just find this to be super like comforting, but also interesting and dynamic. And it's a little cozy, but not in the way that you're like, oh, I can only wear this in the winter, but it's just nice and fresh. But it definitely is not like a going out scent. It just like is a scent to wear in the daytime. And it also gives me like, this is what I envisioned that Marie Antoinette would wear. And I guess there is a perfume that has been recreated utilizing, I think, the ingredients that were in the perfume that she would wear. And I think there are some similarities in like the rose water, jasmine, orange blossom. Orange blossom was really big in the court of King Louis XIV. That, I don't know if I mentioned that when I was talking about that in whatever wrap-up video I did, but there's just a thought that I've been percolating on for a long time. Anyways, the book that this reminds me of is, this one was, I think probably this was the hardest perfume for me, well, the second hardest perfume for me to find a book for, but the book that I thought about was Run River by Joan Didion. Now, I do think that we find out what perfume the narrator Lily is wearing in this book, but there's just something about how Lily is a woman who is a little hard to pin down. She kind of is ethereal in that she's quite just, she presents a very like specific image of what it means to be like feminine, and her kind of femininity is very much so influenced by the ways in which she presents herself and acts as if she's quite like breakable and needs a lot of help and support. But in those moments of crisis, she delivers. She is ready. She has a solution. And I just think that there's something about, in this one scene in which she's wearing this, like, I believe it's a white suit when she's coming back from San Francisco and the suit is wrinkled, and there's something about like that image which reminds me of Fleur Eclair, like a sort of like a beautiful fabric, slightly wrinkled. Yeah, I don't know, that's that. After that we have crushed fruits, and the line of copy for this is a painted still life of blushed fruits in golden hour light. This one is like kind of boozy, and it is very like fruits that have been sitting in the sun, a little bit sticky. Like, I can't pull out a specific fruit, but just imagine a fruit ball. The notes in this, we have like plum flesh, raspberry seed, peach skin, then we have some rose hips, Moroccan orris butter, pineapple husk. There's like a lot of fruits in this. And I think the book that I correlated, the book that I connected it with was Salman Rushdie's Victory City, because there is a way in which Victory City is the story of a sort of forgotten Indian civilization that is experiencing a lot because the gods have turned their eye on the city, and, you know, a goddess has manifested herself within one of the humans there. And because it is also like a story of India, there's quite like, just imagining like quite strong heat, the beautiful like fruit of India, and it's a little like too sweet at times. And there's something just about this that reminds me of sort of like walking through like a very lush vegetal space and seeing like fruit dropping from the tree. And I think at one point in this book, the narrator has to, or the main character has to run off and live in a jungle for a while, and the jungle provides sustenance for her. And I just envision that she was eating a lot of fruit that was probably just a little too ripe, and that's what this smells like and reminds me of. After that, we have the final perfume book combo. We have Toor Toor, which is also another tuberose scent, but this is different than the other tuberose, which was what, Jade Vines. Yeah, Jade Vines is like, reminds me of my aunt. This one, Toor Toor, has grapefruit in it, and violet and vetiver oil, and a little bit of wood. Did I describe what the descriptor was? I don't think I did. I don't remember. Please forgive me if I'm repeating myself. A signature flower, our signature flower, tuberose, made earthy and green. I think upon first sniff, this feels like very green, and then it like dies down and you sort of like get a leather scent in there. And the note that I wrote to myself was, this reminds me of the smell of my inhaler. So I had quite strong, quite bad asthma when I was younger, and I had an inhaler and all the works and whatever. And that's what this reminds me of. So there's kind of, I guess the idea there is like a little bit of metal and just air and like artificial air. And so for that reason, there's like this coldness that I envision with it. And the book that it reminded me of is Sweet Days of Discipline by Fleur Eclair, which is the story of a young girl who's like isolated in a boarding school, and she spends a lot of time, I think it's in Switzerland. Yeah, Switzerland. She spends a lot of time like out of the school, like walking the lands, and just super beautiful space, but I envision like lots of cold wind. Like this is a very cold book, and I think for that reason that's why I like see the connection here. And then this book, it's like interesting because she's introduced to a student and they kind of have a very charged relationship, and yeah, this book is super icy, super cold, and there's some connect there. Anyways, those were most of the scents. There was one more scent that they gave me, which was a tester, and that was for green Vanille, which is another scent that I was really quite intrigued by. That one is a vanilla, but it is Regime de Fleur's take on a vanilla, so it's not your typical like sweet vanilla that reminds you of Bath and Body Works. There's that green quality to it, so it has like almond milk, I believe, or green almond, something like that, coriander, hazelnut. There is just this like earthiness to it that makes it a more dynamic vanilla from the vanillas that I've encountered when I've gone to perfume stores and I'm like testing things out. I could not for the life of me think of a book that correlates with green Vanille. So if you've smelt that and you have an idea, sound off in the comments, let me know your thoughts. I would love to do a video like this again, maybe once a quarter, trying like different perfume houses, discovery sets, and presenting my ideas to you. I hope you found this fun. I found this fun. Maybe with practice I'll get a little bit better at the descriptors, but yeah, this was a fun exercise, and I hope, you enjoyed. Let me know if there's a perfume you really love and if it reminds you of a book. Anything, sound off in the comments. I would love to hear from you, and thank you for watching. Bye.